You know, it's like, what rabbit is going to actually come 2021? What rabbit is actually going to be pulled out of the hat?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and there's so many wild cards like that they're holding. And so that's why it's so hard, even as like an intuitive read, to look at what's going to happen, because they're holding all of these things as like, as playing variables. So like if there's one little piece here, and then they're going to play this card. If this happens, then it's this card. So it's all part of this, like, here's all the backup plans, you know, and none of them are anything that we truly desire as like a, you know, as a whole. But they, each one of them leverages us into a different sense of having to actually look at these things, having to revisit and question everything. So we could maybe talk about that in the video, on like the art of, you know, when you're extra triggered by something that's coming up for debate or showing up on a mainstream level, it's because all of us are really being encouraged on a higher level to use this as a catalyst for actually figuring out our own discernment of truth, and being also able to see all the different perspectives of what's showing up. But you know, it's hard to touch on that subject without inducing a bunch of fear into people, because the expectation or the anticipation of what's coming is, I mean, it's genuinely not pretty. So how we deal with
maybe
that.
the birthing, we're in a birthing, you know, just, I mean, I don't, yeah, I know, because if we start getting into the fear, but let's just see what happens. Let's just do it, because you've been studying this, and I want to just get your perspective on what's happening. Let's leave it to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And let me start it so that I can edit it out, and let me just start it, and you know, and then we're just going to see. Okay.
Cool.
So okay. So let me. Hi, it's Anna-Thea, your Divine Feminine Educator, and I am here with Libbee. She's an amazing woman, and I'm so excited to have you with me and to be able to interview you about this, about what's really happening in the world. So Libbee is an intuitive healer. She is a teacher. She teaches people how to become more intuitive. She's also a sound healer. She does crystal bowls. And so I believe that you come from another world, and you're here to make this a better world. And so I just want to, from your perspective, I mean, maybe we call you a crystal child or an indigo child. I really don't know what you call yourself in that respect. All I know is that you come in with some very special gifts, superpowers, if you want to call them that, to really help make this a better world. And so I think what I'd like to talk to you about in this video is really kind of letting us know what that is happening right now. And you've studied what, you know, we're in a birthing process, but you've been doing a lot of studying in the last few years. And I just want you to share your perspective on what is really happening right now, and what are we really going through, and how can we show up in our best selves to make it so that on the other end, we have a better world, and we look back and we say, I was part of that. But what the heck is happening, Libbee?
Yeah, so I love that you touched on just kind of that otherworldly aspect of myself, because I feel that it's true, but I also feel that me really taking accountability and being accepting of that allows me to become more of the embodied representation for those of you who resonate with that as well. And maybe you're not quite sure what that looks like or what to do with that information, but you know, it's so clear to me that those of us who decided to incarnate during this timeline are very much a part of this more cosmic perspective of taking aspects of who we've been in other lifetimes and really bringing those little seedlings of energy into this physical body, so that way we can start to create that unification and that sort of blissful, dreamy quality of what we want to see here on the planet. And as far as falling into loving each other and being in peace and having a sense of community and belonging. And I think for a lot of us, there's this sense of being so sensitive or so weird or unusual that we feel like we're not meant to be here. But we actually are just tapping into that memory bank of having these other experiences in other places that maybe maybe during those experiences felt more empowered, maybe because we were more supported in that unique and unusual version of ourselves. And so we have this desire that's running through our body to get back there, to have that again. And we're just forgetting that that's why we came here, to sort of plant the seeds and actually create this into an embodiment for planet Earth, to become more of a accepting platform for many different walks of life. And so, you know, some of us have more mediumship qualities that we come in, like myself, who had this very strong sense as a young child that I remember singing about coming from the stars, and I could see my guides and I would talk to them all day long, and I just expected everybody else to have that. And so I would engage people, you know, my parents and my friends and my grandparents, into this world with me. And I'm like, can't you see my guide over here? You know, my friend Billy, he's right there, you know, and everyone's like, she's got imaginary friends, you know. And so nobody really taught me at my young age that it wasn't okay for me to be who I was. And so I have a very high level of gratitude for my upbringing, because it allowed me to really play with who I really am and the memories that I have. And I think, without sounding like I'm creating myself into this box that's really unusual, I think as I accepted that, I became aware of everyone else's ability to hold that frequency within them. They just haven't activated it so intensely. So maybe that's because their childhood didn't really create that sense of safety. Maybe their parents were very religious and had ideas about what seeing things really meant, and maybe it was scary, or maybe it was not okay, or it meant that you were evil. And so all these projections and programming start to come in, and it limits that aspect of that cosmic version of you. But the truth is that there is a ton of us incarnated on the planet right now with varying degrees of this cosmic DNA that is meant to be activated in us right now. And for some of us, it's been slowly activating quite dramatically throughout a series of time. And that's part of what we call the awakening experience. But right now, as we're in this pandemic scenario, and as we're in this huge initiation into the new way of life here on Earth, we are activating that DNA within us, so that way our body can start to remember that it is safe to be here, that we get to have full permission to truly be ourselves no matter what. Nobody gets to define that for you except for you. And the more that you start to understand that you are not only an earthly being, but you're also this cosmic being, and you're a delicate balance of the two of them, you start to create a different vibrational experience in your relationship with the world around you that actually allows the earth to manifest its dream, its idea, to become this utopia space for all of us to live coexisting and having our unique separation, and also the perspective of the unification side by side. So what we're really experiencing right now is such a huge shift in how the structures need to collapse in order for those who are ready to really step into power to actually have the space and the place to really do that, and be in alignment with the vast majority of us. So we don't need every single person to be aware of the awakening that's happening right now. There's a lot of people that are sort of, you know, what I would say are like asleep. And that's okay. We don't really need to pressure them into the momentum that we're feeling called to show up for. All we really have to do is recognize our only responsibility is to take care of ourselves. So anytime anything is happening outside of you, whether that be politically, whether it be environment, whether it be family related, maybe it's just noticing, you know, there's all kinds of change happening in every area of your life that you kind of are having a hard time feeling your center. Those are just really the circumstantial evidence that you are going through a massive transformation on behalf of yourself, but also on behalf of the collective. And so there's this process that we go through where when the intensity really increases, it's a nod to us not playing small. And we are not just going, oh, we can only have this one tiny little change right now, and then we're going to integrate it and then come back again. We're like saying, no, let's blow the lid off of it. Let's do this thing. So what I really witnessed at the beginning of this year was this sort of projection looking at the year of going, wow, whatever is going on in 2020 feels like 5 years worth of healing slammed into 1 year. And that's just me trying to quantify like a pocket of energy. But now that we're in it and we're all the way into August, I can validate that perspective that I had back in January, where it's like, heck yeah, it feels like we've jumped multiple timelines and things are just sort of upside down and sideways. And it's almost impossible to really get a strong read on what's going to happen next, because we're having this hyper awareness of how many different variables are playing into the co-creation. So in a lot of ways, the systems that are still trying to control us as a whole are really losing their power. And what we're experiencing right now is the temper tantrum in their response, trying to actually regain as much power as they possibly can. But the truth of it is that it was a spiritual war and they've already lost. And so what we experience now is the purification of the physical, because we've already done it on the astral, and we're working on it mentally, we're working on it emotionally, and we're working on it physically. And those are the three last places for it to become embodied here. And so as that gears up and as we become more enlightened in that experience, that means that we're simultaneously having to witness and observe all the chaos of evil and destruction that's really happened here on the planet. And so it can be really painful because you're experiencing this like enlightenment, like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm looking at things that I can't even believe are happening. And it's hard to believe that we've been trapped in this system, unable to see that. For many of us, we haven't been called into looking down the rabbit hole in how we've really been systematically mind controlled, in addition to part of this matrix system that cloaks the entire planet. So this isn't just an America issue, this is a global issue. And so over time, there's been a series of families and different less than desirable spiritual beings that have collaborated and created this control mechanism over the planet. And for a lot of us, we chose to incarnate during this time frame because we want to put a stop to that, because we're seeing the greater good, we're seeing the greater service that really needs to be embodied here on the planet. We're saying that's not going to work for us, and that's coming to an end. And so for a lot of us, we're here to initiate that new way of being, and us just being alive is enough. Like us just being here, embodying that, even if we feel like we're not doing enough, we are. It's just us being is simply the ingredient to the change that needs to happen. So the more you're willing to just be yourself and really sit with that, it doesn't even have to really be coming out of your mouth so much as like what I do. Like I'm constantly like, this is who we are and this is what we're doing. But even if that's not what you're doing, even if you don't feel called to speaking it, but you just want to radiate that out into the world, know that you doing that is the solution. And every time you feel called to do more, really knowing that the more you clean house in this vessel, you are contributing to that greater dream of what we want for the planet. So purifying yourself, feeling good in your body, having this goal of like, I want to have, an average of my day feeling really grounded and full of clarity and intuitive insights and engagement with my present reality. I'm not trying to escape every 2 seconds. I'm not counting down on the time trying to get somewhere else. You're not trying to rush through your life or rush to the weekend where you get to just veg out and do nothing. Like those are all aspects of coping that we've been doing on the planet just because this hierarchy system of control has taken over for so long, but that's the only way we've learned to survive that dynamic. And as we start to separate from that, we become more willing to actually see that looking at the darkness and what has transpired here allows the energy to start creating circulation to heal itself. If we don't look at those things and we don't acknowledge that the evil has happened, then we never really free ourselves from the energy that's actually controlling us subconsciously. So you have to be willing. You have
It's
to
the
be
same
willing
thing
to
that
show
we
up.
talked about with emotions. So on a collective level, what's happening on the planet, we've just kind of tucked nicely away over here.
Hmm.
Same thing we do with our emotions. Oh,
Yes.
we just put it over here. So it's
Yes.
the same thing.
And a lot of people say, oh, I just can't look at that. It makes me feel sick. And it's like, yes, you don't want to create an imbalance in the sense of just saturating yourself in that negativity 24/7, but you have to be willing to show up in periods of time to really sit with that, acknowledge it, send it love, send yourself love, most importantly, and really love yourself through that processing. Because if we continue to ignore it and not look at it, we actually create a stronger level of resistance as a whole. And then we create more of that. So it shifts the timeline into having to drag out even longer because people are not willing to show up and accept what is.
Well, right now we have a astrological configuration, which is a square, and it's Mars. Starts tomorrow. Mars, the planet of war, squaring Pluto, the planet of power and transformation.
Yes.
And so, with that, we're going to be faced with a lot of, like I'm just thinking, let's hope that what needs to really, the lid that needs to come off, or what really needs to be uncovered, that it really gets uncovered during 2020, that like we don't draw it out. So I don't know what you see, but astrologically, it's going to seem like the house is on fire, the sky is falling, astrologically, for the next time until the end of the year. And oh, interesting that this is a election year. Isn't that interesting? So what do you see as far as like, do you feel everything's going to be uncovered? Do you think humanity's ready for us to really see what we need to see?
Yes, I think there's a greater percentage of people for the first time in history being willing to look at these things and to discuss them amongst each other. And it's interesting because I see the value of one person in this perspective of sort of pulling myself up out of my body and looking down at the collective. It's like you really see the value that we have individually, because it's hard to really sense that. It's hard to sense your impact and the magnitude of the ripple effect that happens from one person. But you may have one casual conversation with somebody who enlighten them with some little seedlings of, hey, research this, look into this, this is the truth, look at that. And so now you've set that person on a new path, and then they start to say that to a few other people. And then before you know it, your willingness to show up and have that discussion with that one person actually affected 1,000 people. So we can't always quantify the impact, but we are absolutely meant to be resting right now as much as possible, because our body is getting completely oversaturated with energy. Our nervous system is just in a constant state of fight or flight. And this is a whole new paradigm of experience for our bodies. And so we have to meet ourselves halfway. Part of the time is acknowledging the chaos of what's occurring, looking at all the evil that's uprising for us to look at and say, wow, that was actually happening here. Whoa, so being willing to see that actually takes the programming out of your space, and you're no longer subconsciously being affected by it, because now you see it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You've already opened Pandora's box, which is why it's so important. But know that because you were willing to do that, you have that radiating in your being now. Even if you don't have all the answers, even if you don't know all the little details, doesn't matter. You've tapped into it with willingness, and that's your willpower. So now it's sitting in your aura, and as you just go to Costco, and as you just go to Walmart, and as you're just pumping your gas, you are planting those seeds in everyone's space that comes anywhere near you. And it's crazy because I get chills when I talk about this, because it's so true. It's like, this is the most important thing for people to understand, that you being you and you doing the work on yourself is enough, because you are planting subconscious seeds where somebody that you cross paths with at the gas station that you may have never said a word to might go home and be like, suddenly I'm going to look up what's going on with the Catholic Church. I'm just feeling like I need to do some research on, and it's like, you don't have the perspective all the time to see that you impacted that person's life. And now they're on a rabbit hole of discovery of some of the negative aspects of religion. And so what's really fascinating to me is that we always feel like it's not enough, and we always feel like we have to do more. And really, it is so fundamentally true that your internal world and what you are willing to process internally will be reflected in your physical reality. So when you are aware of the desires that you wish to experience here and the change you wish to see, do that change on yourself and act on it to the best of your ability in the present moment. You know, it's like if you have this desire for everyone to be unconditionally loving, do the best that you can to be unconditionally loving with yourself and with everyone around you, and just create that challenge for yourself, because it's difficult. It is difficult to be unconditionally loving, to respond with love every single time someone says, you know, hey, you're an asshole. And you're like, send them love, right? And so everything is about taking what we've known conceptually and everything we've intellectualized and bringing it into the action steps that we're taking. You know, so this isn't just about one-sided, okay, now I know, but you have to be willing to embody it, which is really the action step that creates this circulation in your energy field, which then you match up with all these other people doing the same thing. And so when I look at what's going on the planet right now, there's way more of us saying yes to like true healing work on ourselves and truly sitting with this idea, this imagination center that is so powerful that we've forgotten how powerful we really are from that center. And because there's so many of us visualizing what we want to see here, we are creating that. It just has to go through all the purge and detox before we actually get to experience that very manifestation. So, you know, when I look at the potential, there's a very good possibility that we might have a series of very, you know, unfortunate, very uncomfortable events that play out. And what we have to keep our eye on is the perspective of how is this serving the greater good? What is this event? What is this circumstance? What is this challenge giving us on a collective level? Sometimes when we all experience a massive trauma, it brings us closer together. And sometimes that's simply why we opt into, as a collective, something that's sort of destructive.
Oh, so it's the pattern of sabotage.
Yeah.
You know? Well,
yeah,
let me ask you,
about
Libbee.
Trust.
What?
So it's all about trust and trusting that what is arising is meant to be experienced.
It has to happen, yeah. Well, okay, so my question to you is, what is the role of social media in this transformation, and what is the role of general media, what mainstream media, social media and mainstream media, if you can talk to those two different things?
Yeah, so again, it's funny, I just said trust, and that's what this answer is too. So we're thinking about how we catch lies through, maybe we're not even trying to catch lies, but we just start to see like two conflicts of information, and then we have to question like, well, which one's lying? You know, if this one's saying it's black and this one's saying it's white, like which one is it? And so that, what does that do? It catapults us back into our own truth, our own discernment. Can you feel into your body's sense of truth? And if not, it's time to really clean house in your body so you can have that access of your own discernment for truth. So that way, when these things occur where it's like, well, this person says it's black and this person says it's white and I don't know what to believe, you can breathe and tune back into your body and feel into which one actually resonates with you. And then that is your truth because it's resonating. You're going to know, you're going to feel it, you're going to see it, you're going to have this overall overwhelming sense of just knowing that this is true for you. And so what does that mean when you're applying it to like mainstream media? It means that right now, collectively, you know, in a nutshell description, we're recognizing that we're being played. And there's a lot of misinformation, and we're catching all the conflicts because for the first time ever, we're all sort of unemployed and we're having more free time to actually witness these things that have really been playing out here for so long, but we don't normally have a lot of time or energy to invest in those like investigations. But right now we're sort of catching them. And the beauty about social media is people are bringing it to people's attention. They're saying, hey, look, I caught this and I'm sharing this for you to discern what that means. And so because we're meeting ourselves in this interesting community sense on social media, we're starting to develop a subconscious trust with each other again. Oh. So because we've been so programmed and even in this whole like pandemic thing, I get why we're separated to create a level of healing, but it's also highlighted how bizarre it's been to be a human and be mind controlled into feeling like you can't trust each other and to feel like you're isolated, you're alone. We live in these like little boxes in our houses all next to our neighbors, and some of us don't even know our neighbors. It's like bonkers when you think about it, because it's so against the grain of our nature. Our nature is actually to be immersed in community and to have that community support. And even if you look historically at native, like indigenous cultures, that's very true. Like babies are raised by 10 different women, by 10 different men. And it gives you this great depth of maturity and experience. And so we're missing out on that as a collective. And we're saying, you know what, this would feel really good to have that again. What's it going to take for us to have that? And the first thing is developing trust with one another. So in some ways, social media is many things, but on one thing that's happening right now is we're learning to trust the heck out of ourselves because we have to. And we're learning through that it's okay to actually trust each other, you know? So we're starting to really develop more of a unification amongst the people so we can get our power back. Because right now we sort of think of the powers that be as being more powerful than we are, but that is not true, because the power actually is in vibration. The power is also in numbers. So when there's a bunch of us existing here with a high vibration, we are way more powerful than anything that's trying to control us or limit us or have any sort of sense of suppression or evil, you know, however you want to categorize and label that. But that is a low level effort of control, and it can't meet the high vibrations of actual community, of actual trust and love. So it's like you opt into the untouchable zone where you aren't really affected by their tactics that used to really work and control us. So the beauty of what we're going through right now as a collective is shining light on all the false truths that we believed prior, and we have to learn to not get so hard on ourselves for not seeing that before. A lot of us, this is the first time we've even really been willing to look at those things. And the reason why it's happening right now is because there's way more support on the planet energetically for that processing to occur. It can be really difficult for you to try to keep up your 9-to-5 job and your standard of living while also processing the depth of that information. So it was really important for us to have a type of pandemic or something to kind of initiate us into a pause that then gave us the freedom to say, okay, now you get to research and absorb this information, and we're going to show you all of it so that way you can learn discernment. So you can figure out what truth is based on a frequency and not because this page is telling you that this is what's true. So as a community, as a collective of spiritual beings having a human experience, we simply are saying no to trusting anything outside of ourselves more than what we trust internally, because this is where source energy communicates all the time. And so we've bought into this belief that we need to surrender that, and we need to trust these outside things and trust that they have our best interest. And the fact of the matter is that they simply haven't. And
Bottom line, they do not.
They haven't. And we're recognizing that we don't want that going forward. And
but that's the gift. It's almost like they're narcissists. It's like a woman, it's like an empath in a relationship with a narcissist. It's a gift.
Yes.
So we get to hone our vessel through this experience.
Yes.
And the sooner we hone our vessel, the sooner that we'll get over to the other side, basically.
Well, and then, you know, perhaps there's encouragement here in this discussion to really visit the possibility that we co-created this type of pandemic to occur when perhaps some powers that be that are more on that negative side that we're referencing here may have thought it was one thing, like, oh, let's create this chaos to get control, not realizing the higher perspective of us saying, yeah, okay, we'll opt into that timeline because it's going to catapult us into a higher frequency of love and communion with each other, where we actually get to have this new set of boundaries and systems in place that make sense, that are supportive of every walk of life, where everyone is equal and we all get to live amongst each other and choose what feels good for each one of us, and everyone accepts that as long as you're making choices for you, it's all good. So it's like we need to really take accountability and ownership for the fact that we co-created this and we are not victims. And that is so important, because you get to sit with the truth of how it feels like victimization and go through all those series of acknowledgments of, yeah, this feels like the rug got pulled out from underneath me, and it feels like I don't have a lot of control. It's like, yeah, sit with that feeling. What does that feel like? Because the fact of the matter is we're not headed into a timeline. I mean, we're talking many years down the line here, but either way, it's coming. We're not subscribing to things that don't actually reflect our higher self any longer. So we are learning to embody the higher self. And in order to have that frequency even functioning here on the planet, all these things have to change. So it almost doesn't matter what circumstances play out. I mean, it affects us. So it's hard to put language to this because, you know, there's one part of me that's human that's like, I wouldn't want to see a third world war. Like, that is a preference that I would not, you know, choose. However, if it happens, there's a part of me that instantaneously is like, I'm going to deal with the shock and the disappointment and the sadness and the grief. And I'm going to show up with all that truth because I am human. And despite my knowingness of what's going on here, the fact of the matter is I'm going to be really upset if that's what the reality is showing up to be. But once I go through that, once I go, okay, yep, feel all those things, then I leverage myself naturally into more of a state of neutrality where I can see all of it. And I go, oh, we chose this route because this is bringing this side of the world together. And this is magnifying how important it is for us to speak our free will and to get our rights back as a society. And this is important for us to recognize that we have the power to come together in unity to support each other through anything. It's like right now we're looking at some of the beauty of civilians having to help I don't even know what to call it. To me, it's like a missile strike, nuclear weapon thing that happened in Lebanon. But, you know, they don't have people over there really helping them. They're helping each other. And so this horrible thing happens over there, and looking at, well, what's the higher aspect of that experience teaching them right now? It's teaching them the unification amongst each other and how much they rely on their neighbor and their friends to really create a healing in the midst of probably the most damaging chaos that they're ever going to have in their lifetime. So it's like, if you can't see the value, then you're limiting the healing and you're limiting the integration, which ultimately as a collective prolongs the stretching and the initiation of this massive transformation that's happening. So I hope that makes sense, but it's like, you get to have all the different perspectives. You get to see the pain that it's caused, and that it, you know, there's a part of you that's going to be like, that was not okay. That was an attack. And there's no way I can get behind the fact that that was actually a spiritual, you know, initiation. And that's okay. You don't have to arrive at that acceptance, but just know that when you look at things from a, why did this happen? This is what source energy will show you. It will say, yes, it happened for all of these reasons. This was an attack from this group that has a lot of trauma and a lot of control and fear. And the only way they believe in true power is to attack each other. So you're going to see like, wow, okay, now I'm getting the perpetrator perspective, how they think that this was the right thing to do. Fascinating. Then you're going to look at the victim. Look at all the people that had to suffer because of that choice. You know, so you get to see all of the different things. What does that do? Really, it brings you right back to your center where you go, wow, this is about how we choose from moment to moment our willpower. So the more we use our willpower as an action, as a, okay, this is my belief and this is what I'm feeling in my body. I need to like hold this belief and hold this energy and this emotion or whatever it is. That becomes your navigational tool for growing and thriving in the midst of chaos. So no matter what happens, no matter what circumstance arises, it's your state of being that matters the most. So the only thing you can work on is showing up fully for yourself, so your state of being is more authentic and transparent and in alignment with you being present from moment to moment. So there's no sense in even really looking at, well, what do you think is going to happen next and how can I prevent that from happening? Because you slip into a lower aspect of trying to control it, when really the art is to be flexible and to be in flow and to be like, wow, my body's really processing something today. Maybe something's going to happen tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and sure enough, there's an earthquake. And your body was like, look, I was showing you and you were processing. And that's amazing. That's like your body's intelligence being like, hey, you knew something was going on, you know? So there's so many things to gain from the discomfort, from this initiation, from this stretching of who we are. And for a lot of us, there's an aspect of awareness that, oh yeah, this is what we came here to do.
So just show up and show up in love. Just show up and show up in love. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Thank you so much. This is
You're
awesome.
welcome.
This is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that perspective. And I think we're just going to conclude this segment here with that, because I think, you know, just when we try to figure it out, that's not what we need to do right now. What we really need to do is stay in a higher state of being.
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing is that change can be really difficult. And and when you're experiencing a big change in one area, it's hard enough. But right now we've got change in all areas.
All areas. All areas. Yeah, and everyone, and we're all doing it together. We're all doing it together. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Okay, so I want to encourage everyone to lead with love instead of fear. So just notice whenever there's fear, that just you know, hold it in your love. Hold it in your love. Libbee, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for showing your perspectives and your insights and helping support us in this journey, and really claiming our power and aligning to our center, because that's what needs to happen right now. And that is what's happening, whether we're on board or not, is us aligning with our center. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Namaste.